What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Kwin Kramer. You can check him out at daily.co. Before I formally introduce you, Kwin, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Your story, I don't know, reminds me a lot of, so I had the co-founder of Pixar, L.V. Ray Smith on, and when he started and they were starting to work on Pixar and coming out with Toy Story, they were ahead of their time. They had to wait for the technology to kind of catch up. This kind of reminds me of your story a bit. Like he knew it would catch up, but at what point? So we'll talk about that because it's really cool what you and the company do. So people check that out. I had the co-founder of Zapier on, Wade Foster. That was an interesting one, and how they grew the company. Also, one of the founders of Pipedrive. I remember at the time they had 10,000 customers. Now they have over 100,000 customers and growing. And it was a tumultuous journey, to say the least. Like we always see where they're at now, and it looks like sunshine and rainbows. Well, no, it was definitely ups and downs. So check those out and more on inspiredinsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that in a couple ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production behind the scenes. Number two, we're an easy button for a company's corporate gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to clients, partners, prospects, people even send their staff. Simple, easy, and actually affordable. People just send us a list of the addresses and we do everything else. And it's not just one-off gift. We like to send a campaign of gifts. So think a couple gifts a year for 3 or 4 years. Okay. So, for me, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free for a company to build amazing relationships. And Kwin, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways on how I can give to my best relationships. And for me personally, I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I admire, feature them on the podcast, and also send them sweet treats in the mail. So if you have questions, go to rise25.com or email support@rise25.com. I am super excited to introduce Kwin Kramer. He's the co-founder of Daily, and Daily is the world's leading provider of developer infrastructure for real-time audio, video, and AI. Okay. Their APIs make it fast and flexible to add video calls to any product. They've had customers such as AWS, Google, Epic, Nvidia, and many, many more. He also created PipeCat, the most widely used voice AI agent framework. And they have this really cool resource as Guide to Voice AI. It's a standard reference in this new and fast-growing field. You can check it out at voiceai and voiceagents.com. I don't know if you compare it, Kwin, to like the Twilio of texting or something. Like, how do you, when you're explaining to someone, how do you explain Daily?
No, that's a great comparison. I mean, I think a lot about how to build really, really easy to use, but also very powerful tools for developers to build sort of complicated things into their applications and websites. And companies like Twilio and Stripe that have done a terrific job with hard problems like texting and voice phone calls and payments are always an inspiration. I love Zapier. I liked that episode you did with Wade a lot. We went through Y Combinator a couple years after Zapier. And, the creativity side of things is so important, like helping people build things that are new and feel new and exciting. I went to the MIT Media Lab a long time ago for grad school, and there's a lot of shared lineage there with Pixar. And you're totally right. It's much easier in some ways when you're trying to think of something new to be a little too early to market than maybe you think you are. And we can certainly talk about that and how that plays into your insight that startups are never a straight line path.
I want to talk about what you learned at Y Combinator. I just had Ravenna on, and Ravenna does kind of internal support that starts in Slack and it resolves with AI and intelligent workflows. So it takes Slack and pushes it to, whether kind of ops or a customer support ticket or an SOP or something like that. they went and shared some learnings from Y Combinator. Actually, Ravenna themselves did not go through Y Combinator. They had a separate business at the time, and they shared some learnings. I'm curious, what did you learn from Y Combinator
I
experience?
think like a lot of things in life, and like you said about relationships, the single best thing about YC is the relationships you become part of through the community of founders who've been through YC over the years, and that is a gift that keeps on giving, if you will. I do think going through the YC program itself, the sort of 10 or 11 or 12 weeks, like of very compressed focus on building your startup to the next stage is also very valuable. And you get to work really closely with YC partners who have seen a huge range of startups and, what founders do and don't do and should do and shouldn't do. And then demo day, which comes at the end of the YC program, is a really fantastic forcing function for investors. And one of the things you do as a startup founder when you are in fundraising time, sometimes you are fundraising, sometimes you aren't. But if you are fundraising, it's just incredibly valuable to be able to create some sense of urgency on the other side of the table. And I think there is almost no better way to do that than YC Demo Day. They've really structured things very, very effectively for that.
At what stage was Daily when you went? I know companies are in all different kind of stages when they go through Y Combinator. Where were you at?
We had a prototype of our first product and no customers, no revenue, which I think when, companies in YC vary a lot. And that's actually one of the great strengths of being part of the YC program and then the ecosystem. We had companies in our batch in 2016 that had, that were already at escape velocity. And we had companies that were just an idea. We were not just an idea, but we were much earlier on that kind of company growth spectrum. And I think we got into YC even though we were so early because we had a track record in the space we cared about. We had built a company previously that was focused on very high performance collaboration, networking, audio, video, kind of new user interface, new data processing stuff. And we had built that company to, a reasonable size, a reasonable success. And we had a chip on our shoulder about doing it again and doing it bigger and doing it for the moment we were in 2016. And again, I think we were a little early for that. Actually, we really didn't find great traction until 2019, which, feels like a long time in a startup.
Talk about what you learned. What did you learn from the previous company before starting Daily?
So many lessons for an engineer who likes to write code and focus on the technical things. Growing a company for 8 years and learning how to sell to Fortune 500 companies. I mean, you learn a lot about, I think, managing people as a company
Was
grows.
this Oblong? Is that
This is Oblong Industries.
okay?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we started Oblong in LA in 2006. Capsule summary of Oblong is that we were well known because we built the gestural interfaces that were in the film Minority Report. So very influential sort of, computer science work from my co-founder when he was in grad school. And then we took that and we made it real. And along the way, John, who founded the company with me, worked on that Steven Spielberg film directly. So we used to say that, we had startups need an advantage. And one of our advantages was not everybody gets Steven Spielberg to film their demo reel for them.
Yes,
That was fun.
exactly.
But, the flip side of that is that we started as, a science fair project. We had this thing we had built that we thought was really cool. And we had to figure out, who would pay for what parts of it, why, how to make that repeatable, how to scale that, how to build a team that could help us, build and sell it repeatably, and then how to build a company that could sort of take that team and make a growing, evolving team effective over time. All those things are hard. And they're particularly hard, if you're doing them for the first time, which many startup founders are. And I just learned a lot about working with other people, building an effective team or multiple effective teams, and learning how to sell to large companies because large companies have rhythms and patterns and paces, and there are things that work in repeatable sales to enterprise companies, and there are techniques you learn.
That's what I was going to ask, actually. What do you remember? How did you get your first customer or milestone customer at Oblong? 'Cause I mean, we're talking customers like Boeing and GE, large customers. How did you get your first customer
Our
there?
f- our first few customers were always coming to us because we had something that seemed new and really compelling to them, and what we had to do for them was fill in the value proposition, the return on investment, the way they could actually integrate this into their real work. So we would usually build a very compelling demo with the customer's data or backend systems or mocks for the customer's backend systems. And then we would figure out who at that big company could actually sort of connect the dots through their process on their side, which is always opaque to you from the startup side. Like you don't know who can make the decisions or who has the budget line item. So you have to learn that. You can only do that in collaboration with somebody very motivated on the other side, on the customer side. And then you just work through their process with them and, get through every gate, remove every objection until you get through procurement. And then, you negotiate with procurement, you lose 10% or 15% of the price you already agreed on. And then you're in contract. And then in that first year of contract, you have to make sure that the company actually uses your tech and can demonstrate the value so you get it renewed for the second year. That's the very capsule summary version.
When you were you building something ahead of time to show them, or were you connecting with someone and then being like, listen, we'll spec? Because it seems like obviously it's a lot of time and energy to be like, but it's also compelling to be like, hey, we built this something specific to you. Let's have a call. Or did you have the call and then build something?
We almost always built something very custom for every early customer.
Mm.
And there were a couple of reasons for that. One is the things we were doing were so new that to demonstrate them to what I came to call internally close the imagination gap. To close the imagination gap for all the stakeholders on the customer side, we needed to build something that sort of spoke to them in their world. And this is a fairly common pattern for annual contract values that are in the $1 million plus range, which is where we were early on at Oblong. We would install room-sized systems for people, usually multiple room-sized systems, and then connect them over dedicated network links. So these were sort of very high-end, very specialized collaboration environments with screens on every wall, and you could bring any device you had into the room, and it would be part of the data visualization collaboration environment. They were sort of holodeck type environments, but specialized for individual company use cases, like data visualization for oil companies doing like very big seismic surveys, or IBM built out a bunch of demonstration centers for their big customers that they could bring people in and sort of blow them away with these IBM like very high value collaborative production design pitches. So everything was custom. And over time, what our challenge was at Oblong, because we were good at building stuff, our big challenge was to take the stuff we built and make it more generalized so that we didn't have to build something completely custom for every
Everything was
customer.
bespoke to every single customer.
And we had to get past that to be a venture-backed company, you have to make things a little more scalable and repeatable. And we also needed to push that, contract value down so that customers had an option. We're very happy if you write us a $2 million check for the first year, but we could reach a much broader customer base if we gave you more options. Maybe that wasn't the only way in the door with us.
To get the call, were you building anything ahead of time?
Sometimes if we
Yeah.
knew there was a target customer, but our first 20 customers all came to us, which is I think a little bit unusual, and the Steven Spielberg demo reel I think was what got us that.
So talk about where the idea come from for daily.
So a lot of
And
it
while you
was
talk about it, I'm going to pull up the site just so people can check it out too.
the stuff we built at Oblong was really interesting from an engineering perspective, very compelling to users, but also because of that price point and the complexity of the technology, very, relatively limited. We had, maybe we had order of 10,000 users, even as we got to scale as a company with revenue. And I really thought the stuff we were building around making it possible for everybody to have kind of real-time audio, video, data, and application collaboration was way broader than, the room size systems. So I really wanted to build developer tools that let everybody build audio, video, data collaboration into every website and app. I knew how hard a problem it was, but I also thought I knew how to give the building blocks to other developers to solve that problem. And so that was the genesis of Daily. When we talked to investors about Daily, we put a particular gloss on it, as you always do, which was that we thought real time audio and video communication was going to become a bigger and bigger part of everything we all do on the internet every day, all the time, and that we could build the standard infrastructure and developer tools for that. And I think that vision did play out. I mean, you and I are talking remotely on an audio video call now, and we all sort of take that for granted today. In 2016, when we were talking to investors about Daily, that was not obvious. And many investors said to us, I like you guys. I like your team. I think you could build something really compelling here, but I don't know how big the market is. And that's a super common experience for startup founders. You're trying to paint the picture of how big a market can be before that's, sort of
You're like
settled.
everyone. And no, I remember I was listening to another video that you did, and it almost seems ridiculous now. But like people are like, yeah, I don't see myself going on video calls a lot. And
I'd just rather
yeah,
talk on the phone. I heard that so many times in 2016 and 2017, even from people I knew and had known a long time and had respect for what I'd built before, which was an interesting lesson.
so what was the original use case you're thinking for this? I mean, obviously now you serve, healthcare, education, global work. I mean, all these companies, a lot of use cases. But at the time, was there something specific you had in mind how this was going to be used?
The three things we thought when we started out, and it's interesting, I think those three things are still very fundamental to what we do, even in this new AI era, were healthcare, education, and workplace collaboration. There's a lot more than that, but those three things are such large, important use cases that touch everybody's lives that they were always top of mind for us at the very beginning, and they're still top of mind for us today. So there's a pretty good chance that the most recent telehealth call you've done was powered by Daily's infrastructure and developer tools. We have lots and lots of customers building really interesting things in the education space. So, teaching and tutoring applications, or learning a new language, or one-on-one support for students in a classroom. And that we should come back and talk about the potential of AI agents for that, because I think it's transformative. And then everything we all do at work, if we use a computer for work, we use a whole variety of tools that let us do real time and asynchronous collaboration, ranging from email, which now seems like the oldest of the tools in our toolkit, even though I'm old enough that email was brand new at one point in my career, all the way through AI copilots that can help us use a new piece of software, 100 times faster than before. So those are sort of the three things that I think about all the time from a business perspective because they're so important. I also am super excited about the new kind of social and gaming possibilities of these generative AI models because we all spend so much time on our phones, and doing interesting things on our phones with AI is something I'm trying to sort of think about how to help people build in really good ways.
Talk about the healthcare piece for a second. Obviously, how, the telehealth, so like, I mean, you're the infrastructure that allows this to happen, right? Someone calls, there's real-time audio and video on there, and they're using it for telehealth. How else is it used in healthcare?
So I'll tell you a little story about a thing that really kind of opened my eyes to what the next generation of healthcare and AI was going to look like. We delivered some voice AI powered healthcare tooling to a medium sized healthcare company in the US. A few hundred doctors and nurses and patient healthcare providers in a system that has the typical things that all healthcare systems today do. They have this electronic healthcare record system where everything is stored, and everybody in that system spends a lot of time typing into that medical record system. And every hour they're spending typing up patient notes feels to them like it's taking time away from actually spending time with patients. But you have to do it. You can't not, do good documentation and do good healthcare. So that tension is something that's providing a lot of push for people to adopt new AI tools that, kind of take you away from the keyboard back to the patient. So we deployed
100%.
some.
I have a surgeon friend, and he's like, I think I spend more time. It feels like he spends more time doing paperwork than actually, working on patients
I
sometimes.
hear that over and over from people we work with in healthcare. So almost 2 years ago now, we deployed some voice powered documentation and support stuff for this system, and they were very early adopter, and they were worried about all the things you're worried about as an early adopter. Is it going to be
HIPAA.
reliable?
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely HIPAA and data privacy, reliability. Is the system going to hallucinate the way AI systems do, and is that going to be a problem? So they were right, they're very much on the bleeding edge. So we were focused on solving those problems. How do we get you from a proof of concept that you're excited about to something that you are very confident you can run safely in production? While we were focused on those blocking and tackling, very, very important, but sort of blocking and tackling problems, I was in a meeting with a one of the testers, like a doctor in his 60s, loves being a doctor, loves working with patients. He said to me, I talk to your stuff every day in the car. And I was like, in the car, interesting. We kind of built these bridges to your health record system, but they were for like specific things you're doing in the office. Tell me what you're doing. He said, oh, like it knows what my appointments are today. It knows who they're with. I just call it from the car and I talk about what I'm going to do that day. And it reminds me when I saw that this person last. It reminds me, that they saw a specialist, and then they didn't have a good experience with that, and I had to sort of help them out with that. That happened 6 months ago. I probably would remember when I see them, but I sure like thinking about that stuff before I talk to them.
Hmm.
And it's really smart. Like I ask it some stuff, and like it'll tell me something, and then I'll say, no, I don't think that's right. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, that's probably true. And I was like, that is amazing. So this is like a coworker
It's like a
of a kind.
high-powered executive assistant for someone that remembers everything you've done with the patients.
That's exactly right. And he viewed it as a thought partner. And he was very clear-eyed about what it could and couldn't do. Like he wasn't, he just thought it was a brand new tool that made his life easier and was fun to use in his domain where he is very passionate about what he does. And that really was one of the very early things in this sort of voice AI evolution that we've tried to help out with over the last couple of years that opened my eyes to what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, especially for these health tech companies.
I think
So
it generalizes. I think I've seen a sort of series of those kinds of things happen, like these emergent behaviors that people get really interested and excited in. And I think we're just all going to have coaches, executive assistants, uh, co-pilots, Microsoft calls them, that are just baked into all of our interactions with all of our digital systems. And we're going to view those as very net positive as they make the systems we interact with smarter, more flexible, and easier to use.
yeah, it reminds me. I wonder. I'm gonna have to make sure. So I had taken Tank of the founder of Jotform on, and who knows? They may be using you guys, but there's probably just like collaborations on that front. I'll send him this episode. He'll probably geek out on it as well. So that's cool. From the healthcare perspective, now let's talk about education. How are people using it in the education space?
Lots of super interesting startups experimenting with giving people a couple of different things that I think are separate, but they sort of paint the picture. One is one-on-one tutoring, one-on-one teaching. The conversational AIs, the sort of best AI models today, are very good at having an open-ended back and forth conversation that's very high quality and that can pull in information from the internet or from a specialized knowledge base. That is a really good set of building blocks for a tutor. So I'm having trouble with math. I'm in fifth grade. I can talk to this tutor, and it doesn't replace my classroom teacher interaction. It just gives me more interactive support. And if you look at education research, one of the very, very replicable results of many, many studies is that one on one tutoring support is always very impactful across every kind of school, every subject, every age, every cultural background. One-on-one support is just hugely, hugely impactful. And so I think we're starting to see, like, it's coming into focus, a future where one-on-one AI tutoring is available to every single child in the entire world. And I don't think you can overstate the positive impact of that. So supporting startups and companies that are building the early experiments and making that capability, one-on-one tutoring for every single child in the world available, is just super inspiring to me. The other thing we're seeing is companies building platforms that help people teach things, teach specific subject matter more flexibly and scalably. So I think this kind of vertical platform where AI helps people who are not technical developers build something that's very capable. Again, this generalizes beyond education, but we're seeing it a lot in language learning, coaching, teaching people some specific professional skill, teaching somebody a vocational training stuff. You can, again, expand the population of people that can learn something really effectively when you give people this sort of interactive mode. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world are subject matter experts, but they're not technology developers. You give people, these who are subject matter experts, a way to create a interactive, super flexible, super smart course in what they know best. That is an expansion of knowledge diffusion across the world.
How are people hearing about you? I feel like if someone's building a health tech or an ed tech company, they're looking at daily for their audio, video infrastructure. How are the companies finding you typically?
One of the things we do a lot is contribute to open source software in the open source ecosystem. And for developers, for programmers, that's a pretty powerful way to both hear about a company and be excited and be confident that you can use the stuff the company does. So we're the team behind a library called Pipecast, which is the most widely used framework for building voice agents today. So people use Pipecast for things like a customer support call, where you pick up the phone, you call your bank or whatever, and rather than sit on hold for an hour while you wait for a human agent to become available, you immediately talk to a voice agent. And that voice agent can probably do, today maybe 60 or 70% of the things that the human agent can do for you, which is already a big win. In the future, it'll be able to do 90% of what that human customer support agent can do for you. Or when you call a restaurant in San Francisco, there's a pretty good chance you're talking to one of our agents or one of our customers' agents to schedule a reservation, because you didn't need to take the person who's running around the restaurant trying to make sure everybody in the restaurant is having a great experience and put them on the phone to take the reservation. The voice agent can totally take the reservation. Or a voice agent that calls before your healthcare appointment and interactively through a voice conversation collects all that information that you would otherwise have to like go online and type into a form for. So we're seeing this sort of huge uptake of these new voice AI agents all of a sudden. Pipecast is powering a lot of that. Pipecast is completely open source and vendor neutral. You don't have to use any of the data.
That's what I was going to ask, because like someone's going to be implementing, all these restaurants, whatever system they use. Obviously, the voice agent has to integrate, check out where there's tables available. So someone's actually, it just connects with any system essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have your phone numbers through Twilio, you can just hook that voice agent up directly to Twilio. If you have like a lot of hospitals, if you have a super complicated, built over many years digital phone system and a bunch of consultants that run that digital phone system, you can hook the Pipecast agents up to that, that very bespoke custom digital phone system. We thought that this ecosystem, so we started building these voice agents early, sort of before most other people. And we built a whole lot of tools inside Daily to make these low latency, high quality conversations possible with LLMs, with AI. Once we got to a certain point where we thought, oh, this is incredibly exciting, we felt like the best way to help the whole ecosystem grow up around these new use cases was to open source everything we'd done. So that is the origin story of Pipecast, is that it was stuff we built for ourselves. We thought it was useful. We thought from every possible perspective, it would be useful to sort of put that out in the world with no restrictions on how people could use it. And because we have great infrastructure and because we know how to work with big enterprise customers, to help them get to POC and then to production, we would benefit from
Yeah.
that ecosystem growing.
So they use Pipecast and they're like, this is awesome. And like, we need all this other stuff like video and audio, and we should might as well just use Daily because, they've created this whole infrastructure. I want to get to the conversational voice because I know you have a lot of what youth see is coming out, but I do want to hit on that piece we just talked about, which is you have a very, I think, great value proposition on the website here. When you look at it, it almost seems like a no-brainer. We'll say build with 10,000 free minutes each month. So talk about the pricing and maybe it seems like you've just tried to create a frictionless path for people to use you.
Well, we've certainly tried, and I will say that every startup founder listening to this episode will laugh if I were to say we've succeeded at that, because you're never done. You're never done with removing friction, removing pain points for people getting up and running with your product. You're never done with trying to think about pricing and packaging. We have tried to be really simple and clean about our pricing for our entire history. So we charge you per minute that you're connected to our systems. That tends to work well for the majority of use cases. As you know, there are always customers you would love to be able to serve where any particular pricing you have is tough. The one that's always been kind of a nut we had trouble cracking is you have a seat-based model. Our customer has a seat-based model. They want to make unlimited usage of our stuff possible for their customers, but we charge per minute. So we do custom pricing for, customers at scale that the standard pricing doesn't work for, because we never want to lose a customer. But I do think that the sort of lots of minutes free, we charge you per minute, which generally scales with the value you're providing, aligns us with our customers. And of course, in the new voice AI world, if you just want to use Pipecast and you want to run all your own infrastructure, we're totally supportive of that, because we think, growth in the whole voice AI ecosystem is great for everybody.
I'm going to pull up Norby for a second because I thought it was pretty cool. Can you talk about Norby?
I love this project and this startup and Adrian, the founder of Norby. So Norby's a little robot that can have great conversations with you and interact with other, computers that are around. And there's a couple of sort of really obvious applications for Norby. And I also think it's one of those see around the corner things where as people start to use things like Norby, there'll be lots of things that we didn't even think of today that look obvious in retrospect. So the two things that we see Norby used a lot for today are the kind of teaching and tutoring stuff where you have kids and they're learning stuff, and having a little robot to interact with is a really great form factor for these educational applications, especially for kids that are doing things like speech therapy. So that's a whole sort of set of things for Norby. Another thing I think about a lot that I think Norby fits into is elder care. So there are lots of people who are in their later years who don't have as many conversational opportunities in their lives as they would like, and giving them both a communications tool that lets them connect to other people remotely really easily, which you can do through things like Norby starting an audio call with a human, or a group audio call, and who will just be there and have these conversational interactions with you throughout the day, is really great. And voice turns out to be so much easier for so many people than typing, that these new AI models that can have real conversations with you via voice and get things done when you ask them to do things via voice are just transformative for many, many people's lives. Norby is a startup out of Australia. They're doing really high-end manufacturing of these little robot devices, and they're building really cool voice-first software for them. And they have really big partners like Dell and Nvidia supporting them. So I'm super excited to see where Norby goes.
I mean, anyone who's doing hardware and software, I feel sorry for them. I mean, it's such a tough. I mean,
yes, but
one
but
of them
also
alone
right?
is hard enough. Yes, one of them alone is hard enough. Let alone both of them combined. Like, I have the Aura ring, and I'm like, they have to create this ring that's indestructible when I drop it, it's got to. And then the software's got to work seamlessly too. It just seems like a difficult path. I guess it builds a moat, right?
No, you're totally right. And I got to know Adrian, the founder of Norby, because the software for Norby is built on PipeCat. And when I think one of my very first conversations with him was about how I have also done hardware in startups in the past, and I say I will never do it again, but I probably will because, as you said, you can feel equally sorry for a founder who's tackling really tough problems, but also sort of be like, oh yeah, that's super impressive.
So hard.
I admire that.
Talk about the conversational voice piece. Where do you see it going? And I know you've kind of, I don't know, predicted this path of, constant video calls, and people were like, no, I'm just going to use the phone. I don't see this path. What do you see with conversational voice?
We talked a little bit about how in 2016, telling people that there was going to be real-time video, in their lives all the time was something that people sort of just didn't quite believe.
What I remember when I was doing these interviews, I started podcasting like 15 years plus years ago, and I would have to get on with someone, have them install Skype at the time, which now I don't even think exists anymore because Microsoft killed it, but have them install Skype because I don't know what else was doing video calls at that time. I mean, obviously there was no Zoom and all these other things. So that obviously caught up. So yeah.
Nina and I, who founded Daily together, talk fairly often about how conversational voice AI felt very much in 2023 and 2024, like making that claim about video felt in 2016, 2017. We would say to people, look what you can do with these new LLMs. It's amazing. And they would say, I don't know why I would talk to an AI. And I would say, that's not the right framing. It's not, yeah, sure. I don't know why you'd quote unquote talk to an AI either, but I know why you'd like to cut your wait time down from an hour to literally 1.5 seconds on a customer support line. I know why you'd like to ask questions about math if you're a high school student and you just didn't understand what the teacher said and it's not making sense from the textbook when you get home after school. I know why you'd rather talk to a voice agent that can fill out the form for you before you get to the doctor's office so you don't have to try to pull it up on your phone and type with your thumbs all the answers to these questions. And those are just the obvious things we've already built in 2023. Imagine what those things are going to look like once there are millions of developers building things for their vertically specific passions.
Where do you see it? I mean, you say the obvious use cases, making appointments, and I think some companies are already starting to use it. I know when I call for like a car service appointment, it puts me on with an AI agent first. And also it's obviously referencing all the data in my file and all the stuff it's cumulative. It's smart and it remembers everything. What other use cases do you see besides the obvious ones like customer support, wait time type of stuff?
Yeah, so I'll give you the sort of three phases. I predictions are super dangerous, but here's my prediction. We're still in the very early days of the obvious use cases. Like we haven't built out even 1% of the customer support, teaching and tutoring, sort of online assistance type use cases. There's so much to do there, but that glide path is already sort of up and to the right. And I think more people now see that than don't, probably. Next phase is much more integration into all our communications channels. So I often join a video call with 4 other people, and there are 4 AI note takers in the call. That feels very much like an early kludge, as engineers say, on the way to something much more seamless. So there shouldn't be 4 AI note takers. There should be individual co-pilots integrated into our software environment that knows each of us individually and can be active on our behalf. And I think I'm starting to see startups build those, as you said, AI that has memory, that has agency, and that joins sort of just all of our communications channels. I think that's the next thing. And then beyond that, we're seeing social and gaming and real-time video avatars kind of be in the same place that voice AI was 2 years ago when we were first starting to build the building blocks for voice AI. I think we're going to have really compelling real-time video experiences. And I don't think anybody really knows what those are going to look like because we just haven't had anything quite like that before. But despite the problems with social media, I get a lot out of things like TikTok and Instagram. Like I learn new recipes that I cook regularly now for my family from those platforms. I learn about things I care about, like progress in AI models. These are all videos on TikTok and Instagram that somebody made and then they put on the platform and then they get curated by an algorithm for me. But imagine if that video environment was completely interactive. It would be a new thing. None of us have figured out exactly what that new thing looks like yet, but I'm 100% sure that's the sort of vector of the future.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you think of social or in gaming, what do you think of in the gaming world? What does that look like?
So I have a bunch of friends who are building prototypes for new games with AI. And in fact, there's a really innovative company called Supercell that just launched an AI incubator for games in San Francisco. If you're interested in AI and gaming, you should check out the Supercell AI games incubator. Brand new, super interesting stuff happening there, run by really, really great team. What I'm seeing is three things in gaming. One is AI production tools are making it easier for people to build games. So you don't have to be as experienced a programmer or a visual artist or a game designer because you have these generative AI models that can help you produce the assets, as the game industry calls them. That's a democratization like we've seen in blogging and in video production. And it's really exciting to give creative tools to a broader range of people. The second thing is game worlds. Google released a really cool model just last week that is a dynamic game world, 3D world you can walk around in that's completely AI generated. There's not code powering that world in the same way as kind of game engines that we use today. It's all generated by AI in real time. That's a research prototype today, but it's obvious that games are going to look like that. And I remember having this experience playing the latest Zelda games with my youngster and thinking
I
how
remember
amazing.
the gold thing you actually inputted into the gold cartridge you actually inputted into Nintendo. So,
Me too. And I
yeah.
hadn't really played Zelda since then. But the new Zelda games, the thing that really separates them from my memory of Zelda is just how open-ended the world is. But it's still not completely open-ended. You still hit a wall at the end of the world. It's still something somebody came up with as a world that you are walking around in. The new AI worlds are going to be as much more open-ended as current Zelda is from that cartridge you and I remember from when we were kids. So that's interesting. And then the third thing is these worlds are just going to be populated by AIs you can talk to. So we're sort of looping back around to voice AI, but rather than have scripted interactions with other non-player characters in games, we're going to have these unscripted AI generated interactions, and that's going to make the games feel more open in yet another dimension.
I'm curious what other things you see before we hit record, we were talking about building more useful things with with obviously daily being kind of the backbone. I had on one of the founders of Delphi AI, and I just saw it said, the founder, I actually interviewed his video clone before I had him on because I was like, listen, you already created this, you did the work, forget about you. I don't need to talk to you. I'll interview your video clone. So the podcast episode was probably 25 minutes of me interviewing his video clone and like 5 minutes of him just coming on and chit-chatting about kind of how he created some things. But it was really interesting. So I'm curious, and I'll do a few more of those interviews just to
Yeah.
see how it goes with someone's video clone. What else do you see? What other more useful things do you see people using daily for?
So those Delphi video and audio clones are really impressive, and that company's really pushing into the future what you can do with making somebody's knowledge more accessible to more people in the world. Those audio and video clones also run on daily, which makes me happy.
Boom, there you
Um,
go.
I, I think there's a couple things that I've been trying to figure out what I think about and how to help make happen faster. One is how we write software. I'm spending a lot of time with AI code generation tools now, and so are most of the engineers I know. And we've gone very quickly from typing out all code by hand with maybe a little bit of help from our code editor when we hit tab with auto completion to in freeform English language, telling an AI, hey, here's the system I want to build. Let's break that down step by step, and then you're going to write the code, and I'm just going to review the code. That is a massive change. A version of those tools is suited for engineers who've been doing this a long time. Another version of those tools is suited for people who think of themselves as totally non-technical, but can now write software that's really great with the help of AI. What are the building blocks that are needed by those tools to help more and more people of every kind of engineering background or non-engineering background write more software? And this sort of ties back to a thing you and I were talking about before we started and hit record, which is I was a baby programmer when the web was new. And the reason I'm a professional programmer is because I encountered the web when I was in college and thought, man, this is going to change the world. And I, was so new at all the tech stuff that I didn't know any better. I didn't know why I thought that. It was just super compelling. And so I wanted to learn how it was built. And I went to grad school for computer science after having been a totally self-taught programmer, and that was an amazing journey for me. But the thing that got me there was the sense that how we build software, how we distribute software, and what software can do are all going to change because of the web. And that's now true again with AI. The first time I've felt that way in 25 years. I've loved being a programmer for my whole career, but that feeling I had in 1996, I have that feeling again in 2025.
I'm curious, obviously you went on to MIT Media Lab but you started at Harvard and you majored in Near Eastern languages and civilizations. So, and maybe you had no idea at the time. I'm curious, when you went in, what did you think? You seem like a pretty motivated, diligent guy. What did you at that point be like, okay, this is what I want to do after college, going in with that? Or maybe you had no clue.
I thought I would be like a history teacher. I really love history and I'm super interested in, kind of learning history from, going to college and having access to, all of these amazing resources to study history. So I really loved that college experience of kind of, having professors who knew more than, anybody possibly could about, niche subjects and broad swaths of history. And then I got super interested in the web and taught myself to program sort of on the side and applied to go to the MIT Media Lab to sort of blend like that interest in history with like how you build stuff on the internet. And I just got super lucky to get to go to the MIT Media Lab at all.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I'm sure that there weren't a lot of, Near Eastern language majors who got into the MIT Media Lab, or maybe there was. I don't know.
I will say that one of the amazing things about the Media Lab was how cross-disciplinary it was. There were people doing music and people doing very early AI speech generation and people doing education. I was in a group that did education tooling, which was sort of the overlap with like history stuff initially for me. And people sort of building the first 3D printers and the first little embedded circuit boards that you can put in sort of home devices. I just thought the Media Lab was an incredible, incredible place to be in like 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999. It felt even then, and I think in retrospect, this has held up. It felt like sort of the Xerox PARC of that time. And just being in that cross-disciplinary world where everything feels new and, importantly, there's plenty of funding to build new stuff was just such an incredible piece of luck.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I had Chris Hively who started MapQuest and his major was geography. It's like so it's like, what are you gonna do with geography? Well, I guess he did figure out it was something to do with geography. It takes you in the path that you don't really expect, I guess.
And, I think the web opened up those possibilities in a very particular way. And MapQuest is a great example of that. And now AI does that too. So basically anything you know a lot about, are passionate about, have strong ideas about, you can get these new AI models to shape the technology tools that give more people access to your particular domain of expertise. And the number of possibilities are just endless. Like I had dinner with a couple of startup friends last night in San Francisco, and we just talked the whole night about how much new stuff there is to build. And we just jumped from thing to thing, and the things we've heard from friends that they're building, and things we would like to build but don't have time to build. And that was like 3 hours of conversation. It's just, man, there's so much new stuff to build.
it's overwhelming. I mean, even thinking about daily, if someone pokes around daily.co, it's like the endless possibilities of what you can do with the infrastructure of audio and video and everything available to you.
Everything you're interested in and know a lot about, you could hook up to a voice agent and do something compelling with. I think that's true today, and it'll get more true over as we improve these tools, but it's true today. And I'll just leave you with one sort of big hot take, which is I am now convinced, because of how I use computers and how many of my friends who are on the cutting edge of this stuff use computers, we are going to completely rewrite all of the software we use and all the devices we use, such that we take for granted that we mostly talk to them and mostly don't type. And I get the same pushback I got about video and about the web, when those were both new. People are like, "Well, why would I talk to my computer?" And my answer is, talking is so much
Oh my
easier,
God. It's
so much
10
higher
times
bandwidth.
faster.
It's 10 times faster. We are speaking creatures, and now we have the capability to make software that is voice first. In some number of years, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, everybody's going to look back and be like, "Oh, of course we just talk to our computers all the time." And our kids are going to be like your and my kids are now, about when I tell my kid, like, I didn't have, like, I had a tiny little television in our house when I was growing up, like a 12-inch television. We had one. And he's like, he can't even imagine, he can't even wrap his head around the fact that like, I didn't carry an iPad around when I was a kid. We're going to be exactly the same way about talking to computers. Our kids are going to be like, "You had computers, right?" And we'll be like, "Yes." And they'll be like, "But you you didn't talk to them?" We'll be like, "No, we couldn't talk to our computers." They'll be like, "That's so weird."
There's a YouTube channel. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Kids React, and they put like a VHS
Yes.
tape and box, and they're like, just what do you do with it? And they're like trying to figure it out, and they explain what it is. Like, wait, why wouldn't you just push and go on Netflix? And why do you need to go? You need to go to a store and get a VHS tape. It's hilarious.
And there's a real sort of aesthetic shift in, company websites and the things kind of some of us are building, like in San Francisco in the middle of this AI revolution that's kind of retro tech. Like there's a fixed width font and kind of clean design, like aesthetic that you see in a lot of AI companies. And I think it's partly that thing where we're all trying to think about, like, what are the lessons? What are the lessons from the VHS tape to interactive video? Like, thinking about the technology development cycles of the past is like super, super interesting if you're trying to design something really new. I was riding around with a friend last weekend in his electric Volkswagen bus. I don't know if you've seen these, but they're really, really cool. Totally electric relaunch of the VW bus. Big screen in the front, like super, super tech forward car. I was like, you know what you need in your electric VW bus that is 2025 model? You need an 8-track. Like, this car
Right.
is not complete without an 8-track.
I'd love to talk about team and building the team and the evolution of the team. Originally, and maybe this coincides with investment, right? With Y Combinator, what did the evolution of the team look like? And obviously, people can check out daily.co company and learn more about, the company in general. But you've had different, investors throughout the years too.
So, on the team side, I think the only general advice you can give in startups is try to hire people who are really intrinsically motivated to do the thing you want them to do. Um, Being excited about the work of the company and the work the individual is going to be doing in that company makes up for almost every other challenge you're going to have as you grow a startup and as you work with people. For specifically daily, because we do something that is so deeply technical, we have always biased very strongly towards hiring people who are super, super experienced engineers. Like, we optimize the routing of network packets on the internet, and that's quite a specialized engineering job. So generally, we've hired people who, like, have done the kinds of things they're doing at daily a couple of times before in their career and are still really interested and excited about doing it again, in the context that we're doing it. And that has proven to work out really, really, really well for us. One of the things that's meant is that we hire remotely. We're an all remote team. And I miss being in the office with these wonderful people every day. I would love to be an all San Francisco team, but for us, with the expertise we need, the right trade off was build an all remote culture and work really hard on making that all remote culture like super, fun, sticky, productive, all those things.
My last question, I know we have a couple minutes, is just your favorite apps. It could be
Mm.
computer, phone, maybe those you can't live without apps, or it could be health apps. It doesn't matter. Um, I don't know. I guess on a daily basis, um, I use LastPass a lot and Sweet Process a lot and Text Expander a lot. And you mentioned the voice, like I installed WhisperFlow after
Yeah,
someone recommended it because I do not want to type anymore.
that's right.
So I'm curious your favorite desktop or phone apps that you like.
Whisperflow is fantastic. I really like what that team is doing. And there's much more space to build in these voice areas as we were discussing. I, I'll give you a hot take, which is that the apps we value the most are apps we're going to have a complex relationship with because we spend so much time in them. So Slack is in that category for me. I spend so much time in Slack and I could not work in the kind of company culture that we have at Daily without Slack. I also spend too much time in Slack and would like to find ways to work more efficiently even than I can in Slack. So there's always this like, you spend a lot of time in an app, it's absolutely indispensable to your life. You also feel a little bit scratchy about that. I think that's an inevitable cycle. I feel that way about Gmail, which, on I couldn't live without Gmail now. I couldn't live without Google Maps now, but they're both a little bit constraining and they don't work exactly the way I'd like them to. I do think in this next generation of AI generated software, all our apps are going to become much more liquid. They're going to be much more flexible. We're going to figure out the building blocks for software that make tools like Slack and Gmail and Google Maps much more tailored to exactly how I use them. And that's interesting, partly because it's interesting to me as an engineer, partly because we don't know what those building blocks are yet. We don't know what the core bits of software Lego toolkits we need as engineers to make software liquid.
Quinn, first of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your expertise. And I want to encourage people to check out daily.co to learn more. If you know someone building something cool with health tech, ed tech, it could be anything with audio, video, whatever it is. Tell them
Robotics
that,
like Norby.
yeah, robotics, check out daily.co. So thank you so much, Quinn, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.